Hello, and welcome to What is Innovation, the podcast that explores the reality of a word that is in danger of losing its meaning altogether. This podcast is produced by OUTLAST Consulting, LLC, a boutique consultancy that helps companies use innovation principles to solve their toughest business problems. I'm so excited to have Mike Ross with us today. Mike is the founder and CEO at Juniper, a Canada-based consulting firm, and like me, a former McKinsey consultant. So, Mike, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thank you, Jared. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, appreciate you making the time. I like to start out with the question of the day, which is, in your mind, what is innovation?
It's a fantastic question, and thanks, Jared. And I listened to some of the other podcasts and some of the thoughts the other folks had, and one of the things that's definitely true is it's something that's open to interpretation, right? Different people have different views on it all the time. What I would say is that actually my own thought around it has changed very recently. And let me walk you through it. So I kind of like in an effort to become a Twitter superstar, right? I came up with a hashtag at one point, which was innovation is hashtag creativity realized. And the idea being that there's almost two pieces to it, right? There's creativity, there's something new, there's something exciting happening, but it also has to be realized, has to be manifest in the world. And where my thinking has changed is just on that second part, and it's shifted just a little bit. And what I would say is not as tight a hashtag, but my new hashtag would be innovation is creativity with impact.
Creativity with impact. I like that.
And if you want, I can pick it apart a little bit, but obviously two big pieces, again, still the same, right? The first is creativity. And I think, innovation, something has to be new, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be new to the world. It can be new to our organization. It could be new to the way we're doing things. We could be taking something that was used over here and applying it over there, whatever. But there just has to be a creative aspect to it. There has to be something new happening. But what separates innovation, I think, from a bunch of things that are creative but don't actually go anywhere is that to do innovation well, and I mean innovation in a kind of organizational corporate context, right? I don't, there has to be some impact. There has to be some manifestation of it. That thing, that business model, that process, that product, the whatever it is that you have created has to actually have an effect, or else we're not talking about innovation, right? And I, like you, have a lot of clients or organizations who are trying to be more innovative, and I think often they struggle with this definition, and they get into these kind of ridiculous long meetings about whether continuous improvement constitutes innovation or things like that. And to me, like it's almost like that's a bit of it's a bit of a distraction, right? The question that you should be asking as an organization is, are we doing new stuff? And is that new stuff having an impact?
Right.
But let me pause, get your reactions, then I can keep picking it apart.
No, I just am busy nodding my head over here. It's that's exactly the sort of mindset, and that's why we're talking today, because I believe you and I have a similar perspective on things. But that creativity with impact is beautiful in its elegance and simplicity, and so it's so simple that it's hard for I think clients of ours to digest as being good enough.
Yeah, and again, we could spend hours, picking apart the kind of examples and stuff like that. But I think what's important about this, and again, in the terms of the work that I do, and maybe this is a good kind of grounding in terms of sort of who I am and where I'm coming at this from. But I spend a lot of my time actually on the culture of innovation. So a lot of my work has kind of gone past the coming up with new ideas and helping organizations to be innovators and coming up with ideas for them, and more around creating cultures of innovation. And perhaps that's why I'm so happy with a nice simple phrase, right? Because I think that part of this with impact, that push, is to get away from the endless debates of what is and isn't innovation, to get away from the what's the navel gazing that comes along with that, and just actually do stuff.
Right.
And I want to be careful too, in the sense that impact in itself is an ambiguous term, right? You can have positive impact and negative impact.
Right?
Now, does it have to be positive impact? Well, I mean, if you want to do lots of it, you want your organization to survive, you better hope you're hitting more home runs than you're hitting strikes. But the reality is that you learn a ton from making mistakes, right? And I know that's trite, and I'm sure that all your listeners know all that stuff really well.
Sure.
But I think that it's important that it's caught in that innovation in and of itself requires that willingness to make mistakes, requires that willingness to try stuff and say, you know what, even if we just learn something what we're not supposed to do, that's still impact and that's still positive.
Right.
And so for me, it I don't know, I'm ready to fight you on this, Jared. So if you want, you can, like, you get at me with, what other people would say or stuff like this. But to me, there's a great utility in having a simple, crisp definition like that.
Yes.
That again, your clients would say, well, am I being innovative when I do this, when I'm doing continuous improvement, right? And I would say, are you doing something new? Arguably yes, arguably no, right? And maybe it's new to you. You're putting in a new process that you've never tried before, but maybe everybody else in the world has been doing it for the last 50 years. That's still innovative for your organization.
Right.
And is it having an impact? Well, hopefully, yes. And either an impact in the sense of things are getting better or an impact in the sense of we're learning what not to do in the future. That's innovation to me.
I'm with you. And I think a lot of times the definition of innovation and the defining of it becomes, like you said, sort of a navel-gazing exercise and obscures the opportunity to think in a more innovative way in other parts of the business.
Absolutely.
So you're trying to label this new product or this new service as innovative, or is it not innovative, or is it transformative, or is it disruptive, or is it incremental, blah, blah, blah. And, your accounts receivable process hasn't changed in 25 years, or your finance department is still thinking about things in old ways that actually inhibits your impact, that connection you're making between creativity and impact, because you can have a 3-day workshop, and you and I have facilitated those 3-day workshops, lots of post-it notes, lots of whiteboard activities, lots of fun lunches and creative activities, and everything that was discussed there gets negated by the broader culture,
agreed.
Broader way of doing things.
No, absolutely, and I think I'm going to give you another one of my hashtag sayings. So by the way, I have like 4 Twitter followers, so this has actually never reaped me any benefit whatsoever. So do as I say, not as I do, or something like that. But another one of my hashtag phrases is, how you do anything is how you do everything.
That's a good one.
I'll illustrate that with an example. So I had a client and they said, we want to be more innovative. And I said, okay, good. I can help, right? And they said, okay, well, the first thing we're going to do is build a lab. We got to have a lab. And I said, what? And they said, yeah, we've got the space and it's over here. And it's like this, kind of big boardroomy thing that they've repurposed to be their lab. And they said, we've got this architect, and they showed me the plans, and they actually started choosing the furniture for the lab.
Wow.
And I said, how do you know you need a lab? And they're like, well, because it's innovation, right? We got to have a lab, right? And we can't be innovative without this lab thing. And it's funny to say, right?
Right. Saying it out loud, but it feels natural in the moment. Yeah.
No, exactly. I'm sure if I told them this anecdote like 6 months before they decided to do it, they'd be like, those people are crazy, right? But they get into this, right? And they said, well, yeah, innovation. How are people in this stuff? I said, look, I tell you what, you've got this boardroom that you decided to repurpose. Leave all the furniture in there, right? Get your printer, print out a sign that says Innovation Lab, right? And then just stick it on the door and see what happens.
Yeah.
Right? Tell everybody, hey, that boardroom on the 6th floor is now the Innovation Lab, right? Whatever. Do people come in? Are they, and they like put, those big Post-it sheets, right, that we all use, the big white ones. I said, cover the walls with those so people can write on the walls. You don't have to repaint the walls with whiteboard paint. Like, just cover the walls with the Post-it sheets. Are people using it? What's happening? Right. And then talk to the people. But the point is not that I know the answer to how to create an innovation lab. Not at all. The point is that the iterative process of innovation should be used to answer the process of how do we innovate.
Exactly.
I don't know if I got too meta there, but
no, I'm with you. I think that innovation is about, in people's minds, becomes about the process of creating new things, and I think it can be broader than that. It can be about how you go about doing the elements of what you consider innovation, and it's funny because there's a big lack of creativity and a lack of impact in how people innovate.
Of course.
There's a book, there's a template, and there's a model, and you do it this way. Yeah. And you get a lab, and you take the innovative people, and you separate them from everybody else.
Exactly.
And then you go and you give them a new process. You give them all the fancy things that they want and need, and
hopefully some consultants. Hopefully, we wouldn't say
Yes.
consultants there. But no, absolutely, absolutely. I talked to another anecdote. I talked to a guy who's the head of one of the bigger law firms here in Canada, and I talked to him about innovation, and I said, what are you guys doing about innovation? And he said, oh, we got that covered. I said, oh yeah, right. Well, what are you doing? He said, we got a committee. And because I'm the type of guy who says stuff like this to people, I said, you've got to realize how that sounds, right?
Right.
You've got a committee to study innovation.
Right.
And he said, yeah, no, I get it, fine, But he said, but we've got three of our best, most senior people working on this question, most successful people in this firm. And I said, so what you're telling me is you're taking three people whose identity and whose success and whose kind of personal security and all that stuff has come from the way the system is currently being run, in charge of changing that system.
Right.
It makes no sense. It's crazy, right? It's crazy.
But I think you're exactly right. The tendency is to take top performers or people who are not actively engaged in the day-to-day of delivering the business and make them the innovation team.
Yeah.
And the moment you do that, you send it back to your comment about culture. You send a clear message to the rest of the organization that innovation is a department. It's not a mindset. It's not a way of working.
Not your problem anymore.
It's you don't think about innovation anymore. Do what you do. Launch that detergent the same way you've been launching that detergent. The innovation people, they'll take care of the next thing.
Exactly.
And that's the day that innovation dies a little in your organization, I think.
Totally. I think you're right in the sense that it's like almost like you'll have less innovation as a consequence than you did before you did any of those changes.
That's right.
Although I would say that, which is not to say there aren't some times when having like a little separate innovation kind of skunk works hub or something isn't a good idea. I think that the right answer is that there's no right answer. There's no universal right answer, right? And the right answer is for you as an organization to try stuff and see and say after 6 months, okay, well, we've had this little skunk works thing and they've been out there, hopefully in Palo Alto where it's nice and sunny, for the last 6 months doing their own thing and spending a ridiculous budget and nothing's come of it. Okay, well, let's try something else.
Right.
Rather than let that sit there for 5 years, right? And I'm sure we both have clients who, you're like, well, how long have these guys been doing this for? It's like 5 years. Right. And you go to see the place, and I've been to some of these skunk worksy places where it's in these nice exposed brick, lofty, kind of maybe in some sort of, I don't know, rehabilitated downtown core area of whatever city you're in, and it's like, whoa, and they've got a foosball table and they get lunch brought in. Yeah. And God forbid you bring anybody from the mothership, the parent organization, to that, because those people they get lunch. Like, what the heck? Yeah. But no, we got to give them lunch because they're creatives.
That was my first thought.
You go there and you're like, what the heck, right? Like, why have you done something that is not being useful and have not iterated on it? That's the question I always have. Why haven't you? Did you not read the book that you were supposed to read about innovation, which says, to me at least, a process, if we want to talk about this, requires two big things. One is information, data, analysis. It requires ethnographic interviews if you want to do that. It requires some form of an understanding of the problem. It requires some moment of creativity, sure, but perhaps most importantly is experimentation.
Right. Yeah.
And if you're not going to experiment about how you experiment, then you're just telling everybody that I don't actually believe in experimentation.
Exactly. That's the danger of the quote unquote innovation playbook that people have kind of dogmatically adopted, that says take a loft, put some people in it, give them an unlimited budget, feed them lunch, and wait 3 years.
Yeah.
And I think the experimentation aspect of it gets woven into that with all good intentions in terms of the aspect that they're working on. But what it doesn't get woven into is the outcomes. And one of my big principles, I love year 3, and I would add a coda to that about outcomes, because many times we dive into innovation processes with this fascination with the process and with possibilities, but we don't actually sit down and say, well, what should we have 3 years?
What's the impact?
Yeah, what's the impact?
Yeah, what's the impact, right? Like, it's funny actually. When I worked at McKinsey, I used to always think that what I would do is I would pop out one of, these a bunch of keys on your keyboard you never use, right? I don't know, some of
Right.
these ones on the bottom, I don't even know what they do. But I would pop them out and I would get a new key made that said impact, right? And you could just press that all day. But I mean, it's a silly consultant joke, but the point is that if you're not having impact, then there's no point, right? Like,
Right.
so if, you know, 3 years, you should be able to say to me within 3 days, what useful thing have these people come up with? Within
Mhm.
3 hours, let's put that as the bar, right? In 3 hours, you with your loft and your free lunch and stuff, you have to come up with something that's useful.
Right. Right.
And that could be a shortened accounts receivable form. It could be, I mean, it could be anything, right? But it just
Right.
like we don't role model, we don't live that innovative thing. And I would say, and I did say, I think there's a lot of different ways of doing this. I would say generally my kind of 80-20 rule on this is that separate innovation hubs are dangerous things
Mm.
because it's too easy to get lost in that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's too easy, as you said, for everybody else in the organization to say, throw up their hands and say, this isn't my job anymore. Jane and her team, they're the innovation crew, and I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I would agree with that synopsis. And one thing I'm curious about, based on your point of view so far, is we talked about creativity um, and its connection to innovation. How do your clients and how do you think about creativity in the context outside of product and service, like
Mm-hmm.
delivery? So,
Mm-hmm.
um, do you have many conversations about that?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, creativity I like is just because it's a fancy word and people get excited. And to me, innovation is a bit of a Trojan horse, right? Because my mission is to change the way organizations work,
Yeah.
right? And I want organizations to be much better places for people to live and work, right?
Hmm.
And I say that on purpose, live and work, because work-life balance, whatever. Most of us, there's a lot more living at work than there is anywhere else, right? And I want there to be better organization. And I think one of the crucial missing ingredients to organizations being good places to be as employees is a lack of creativity, a lack of freedom to be creative. So I kind of, to me, I use innovation. That's my Trojan horse. I come in because nobody's going to pay me to come in and see an organization and make people happy.
Right.
I mean, some people get paid to that, but I don't have the right beads for it or whatever. I don't have the hair for it or whatever. Right. So I say, look, I'm going to help make your organization more innovative. But really what I'm more interested in is that change of culture.
Right.
And so I use creativity in that sense because I think that there's a sense of possibility that comes with creativity, right? And for your listeners who have kids, you will know this, right? I think there's a Picasso quote that is, "We are all born artists, only a few of us survive."
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's a sense of creativity, there's a sense of freedom that comes with that. And so what I really mean is just new stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Just new stuff. And so, yeah, products and services can be new. Business models can be completely new. Markets can be new. The delivery mode can be new. And it's interesting actually, because I used to do a lot of work for some reason, especially when I was at McKinsey. I had a lot of clients that were extremely innovative companies, like brand name fancy pants, like, whoa, my goodness, they're fancy innovative. Make a list of all the innovative companies in the world, and some of them I got the pleasure to work with, and I'd always get the chance to work with their like sort of back end processes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And my big thing was HR. Like I was like, innovation in HR, that was the thing that I got really excited about, because you'd have this like amazingly, and actually I could talk about this one because we did this one actually after I left McKinsey, and
Mm-hmm.
we did a bunch of work with Cirque du Soleil, which,
Oh.
Unfortunately they had pretty big issues with COVID. And so they're not doing so well now, but we did a bunch of work with them.
Yeah.
And it was like, one of the most creative, interesting, amazing organizations.
Right.
But we were hard to come in and help with their HR group, right? And the guys who do the accounting and the finance and the lawyers, right? And stuff like this, and help them think about how to be more innovative. And that's always a really interesting thing, because in a way it goes back to that point you made, in the sense that in some of those organizations, there's so much creativity, new stuff happening on the other side, that those people feel they have absolutely no right to do that.
Right. Right. Yeah. I wonder if there's a connection between implicit connection between stability and innovation, and there has to be some sort of counterbalance.
We're going to take enough crazy risk over here, so like this stuff better be like bread and butter, meat and potatoes, no wackiness.
Right. Yeah.
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 But anyway, so to me, that creativity extends everywhere,
Mm.
everywhere. Like the man or woman who's sweeping the floors at night, right, should have the right, the obligation to say, hey, I don't think this is done right. And if I did this differently, then it would work differently. And that would be better.
Right.
And I want to try it. And then they should be given the opportunity to try it.
Mm-hmm.
I went down to South America and we went to see this again at McKinsey, a big CPG, a consumer packaged goods company, huge company.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, okay, we want you guys to give us some new ideas, some innovative ideas. I said, how many employees do you have? And they said, we have 30,000 employees. I said, you don't need any ideas. Of course, so my kids, like the partner on the deal is looking at me like, shut up, man. Right? Like, and I was like, you don't need any ideas. What you need is a way for that guy who's driving a truck and doing deliveries, when he comes up with an interesting idea, to somehow get it to you.
Right.
And there's two things that are required for that. One is actually three probably. One is he has to want to,
mm-hmm.
right? He has to have a channel to do it. And he has to see that there's an impact.
Yep.
Which maybe is part of the first one, but I like to talk in threes. But without, like, you don't need to hire a bunch of consultants to come up with this. Like, those ideas exist. You just need to give people the liberty to be creative.
Yes, exactly. Give them the hope that their creativity will lead to a different life for them in the future.
Will have an impact.
Yeah, exactly.
It's creativity with impact.
And when that hope isn't there, then nothing bubbles up, because why bother? And then you think no one has any ideas.
Yeah, there's a client out there that they had this thing where it was like, if you came up with an idea, and it was a manufacturing company, right, big manufacturer here in Canada, and they had this thing that said, like, if you come up with an idea that saves the company money, I can't remember what the percentage is, but we'll give you 10% of the money we saved.
Yeah.
They turned that shit off like super quick because they were giving out so much money. And I said to the client, I said, why'd you turn it off? And he said, do you have any idea how much money we were giving people? And I'm like, well,
but it's still 10% of
it's 10%. You know what I mean? Like, but it was just that kind of concept of like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. Like, we can't be giving out. I said, okay, change the math, right? Like, make it 5%, whatever. Mm-hmm. No, it's too crazy. Like, but you're right. It's hope, actually. Hope. And if I can, so I'm going to get on my hobby horse here. The biggest impediment to innovation in organizations, I don't know if this is a question you wanted to ask, but I'm going to answer it anyway, Jared.
Yeah.
The biggest impediment to innovation in organizations is fear.
Yeah.
We live in our organizations in fear all the time. People live lives of constant fear. They're afraid of being fired. They're afraid of looking foolish. They're afraid of somebody laughing at them. They're afraid of their idea being poo-pooed. They're afraid all the time.
Wow. That's so true. And of all the types of ways of working, innovation is most susceptible to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. How have you been able to overcome that kind of fear? I mean, I know you're an innovative guy and you do it for other people. I know the way you run your business is very innovative. How do you push through that fear?
I'm not sure that I have. Not sure that I have. You ask my wife and she would say, man, he's always talking about fear, right? Of fear of things not going well and fear of clients not liking what we're selling and stuff like that. I don't know. And I guess if I was being bravado-esque, I would say maybe it's a question of different fears, right? Like the fear of not living the life that I want to lead maybe trumps the fear of saying something stupid, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's interesting. And you talked about workshops, right? I always say to people when we're doing workshops, my role in a workshop as the kind of workshop facilitator is to be the stupidest person in the room.
Yeah.
My role is to have the dumbest ideas, because what I want to do is I want to create a space in which somebody's going to say, well, that guy can say that. I could say this, right?
Yep.
Now I'm like, what we should do is when you open the box, it actually explodes and blows your hands off. And they're like, that's really stupid. I'm like, yeah, would that be great? And then somebody else can actually say, well, actually what it should do is this. And I'm like, but I don't know. It's a good question. How have I overcome that fear? I don't know that I have. Like, I live in fear. I have a lot of, like, I worry about stuff and money and all that sort of stuff, just like everybody else does. I think that maybe it's just that there's a pressure in me that says, the worst scenario would be one where you don't get to do things that are different.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the, you almost got to set up, for somebody like me, you almost got to set up a bigger fear that trumps the little fear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the other key I'm hearing in what you're saying is you haven't eliminated fear, and it doesn't sound like you're trying.
Oh.
It's less about conquering or dismissing fear and more about finding ways to move through it.
Yeah, I was actually just on the phone just a second ago with the guy we were talking about risk, right? And this guy is a senior leader here in Canada, is on the board of lots of organizations, really like a well-known sort of, I guess, not a management thinker, but like a manager, like somebody who's done a lot of stuff.
Right.
And he said, I think that what he said was, I think that most people think about risk in the wrong way. They think about risk as something to be avoided. And he said, and then there's another group of people who think about risk as something to be embraced.
Right.
And he said, I don't think it's either of those things. Risk just is. It's just a thing, right? And it's part of the calculus. Yep. And as you're thinking through what you're doing, you've got to figure it out and how do I mitigate it and all that kind of stuff. Yep. But it's not, there's no thing that is risk. And I think, again, it's this notion of how do you overcome fear? Well, fear just is a thing that is. It's always going to be there. You don't try to overcome it. You just work with it.
Yeah, well said.
There's another hashtag out there. Follow me on Twitter. I'm on Twitter.
we gotta make sure that these hashtags are
captured somewhere, man.
Yeah. Mike, it's been a pleasure. It's so much fun as always chatting with you. We have to do these things more often. One last question.
Of course.
If you had some advice, some free advice from an innovation expert to offer listeners, current and future innovators of the world, what would that be?
Do you want like how to innovate advice, or do you want kind of like life advice?
I want the advice you want to offer.
Okay, I'll tell you one last anecdote. Right, and the problem with this one is it doesn't lend itself that well to a podcast, but still, it's important. Right. So when I was at McKinsey, kind of near the end of my time there, I sat down with a guy who was like the head of the office and smart guy. And he said, Mike, I worry about your career. And I said, what do you mean? And he drew this kind of like classic kind of two axes, right? Like a XY axis, right? And he put sort of up near the top right, he said, this is the goal, right?
Right.
And he said, when you started here, you were on this, and you started drawing a straight line from like the bottom corner towards that point. And then he said, for the last like year and a half, you've been going, and he just started going wiggly, right? And the line's going up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down, right? And he said, you're moving towards a goal, but nowhere near the way you were before. Mm-hmm. And he said, if you want to get that success, like, you're going to have to change the way you're doing it. And I took his pen and I circled the up and down lines. And I said, that's how I define success.
Yeah.
The key to happiness is stop letting other people define success for you. Figure it out for yourself. What is success? Once you figure that out, it becomes so much easier to get it. But be very careful, right? Because that takes work. It's not a kind of like you wake up and you're like, aha, I know what it is. Like, it takes work to pick that apart and to see it and to understand it and to accept it.
Right.
That's the other important community, because for a lot of us, like, forgiving ourselves for not wanting what everybody else wants is a hard thing to do.
Wow.
So there you go.
I'm gonna take that's heavy, Mike. I'm gonna take that one and chew on it myself. I love that, forgiving yourself for not wanting what everybody else wants. That's just a profound statement and useful statement, which I think is rare with advice these days. So thank you for that, and thank you for your time. It's been
of course,
it's been a genuine pleasure as always, and looking forward to the next time.
Well, anytime, Jared. A real pleasure. Thank you.
All right, take care. We'd love to hear your thoughts about this week's show. You can drop us a line on Twitter at OUTLAST LLC. That's OUTLAST LLC. Or follow us on LinkedIn, where we're Outlast Consulting. Until next time, keep innovating, whatever that means.